The sun hung low in the Portland sky, casting long shadows across the living room. I stood by the window, watching the leaves dance in the wind, each flutter a reminder of the life outside my home. It was a typical Wednesday evening. My husband, Mark, was at work again, buried under deadlines and meetings. The house felt empty without him, filled only with echoes of laughter that once bounced off these walls. I sighed and turned away from the window, feeling a familiar weight settle on my chest. The routine of family life had become monotonous, and I found myself longing for connection, a spark of intimacy that had faded over years of shared responsibilities and unspoken frustrations. I wandered into the kitchen, where the remnants of dinner lay scattered, half-eaten plates and forgotten glasses of wine. "Mom?" My son's voice broke through my thoughts. Jake stood at the entrance to the kitchen, his tall frame silhouetted against the fading light. He was 20 now, an adult in many ways but still my little boy in others. "Hey there," I said softly, forcing a smile despite my lingering sense of isolation. "Want me to give you a massage?" "You look tense," he offered, stepping closer with an unexpected earnestness. I hesitated, caught off guard by his suggestion. A massage? It felt strange to consider such intimacy with him, yet there was an undeniable comfort in his offer. "I don't know." "It'll help," he insisted gently. "You've been stressed lately." His eyes were sincere, filled with concern that tugged at something deep within me. I weighed my options. The thought of letting someone else touch me, someone who wasn't Mark, was unsettling yet oddly appealing. I missed being cared for, I missed feeling wanted. "Okay," I finally said, trying to brush aside any discomfort. As we moved to the living room floor, I felt a rush of vulnerability wash over me. The air thickened as I lay down on the soft rug, closing my eyes to block out distractions. Jake's hands were warm as they began to knead my shoulders, each press sent ripples through me, not just physical but emotional too. With every stroke, memories flooded back, afternoons spent playing catch in the backyard or quiet evenings reading together on rainy days. Those moments felt so distant now, overshadowed by years of routine and neglect. "Mom?" Jake's voice pulled me from my reverie. "Yes?" I managed to reply, trying to focus on his touch rather than where my thoughts were leading. "You okay?" he asked softly. I nodded but didn't open my eyes, admitting anything else felt too risky. Instead, I shifted slightly under his hands as if seeking more comfort while battling a growing sense of dread at what this moment might signify. The longer he continued, the more complicated everything became, the warmth between us igniting feelings that had long been buried beneath layers of obligation and guilt. I tried to push those thoughts aside but found them creeping back like shadows in a dimly lit room. Then it happened, a fleeting brush against my skin that sent an unexpected jolt through me. It was innocent yet charged with something deeper than either of us could articulate. "Mom?" His voice was tentative now. "Yes?" My heart raced as I fought against an urge that threatened to unravel everything we had built as mother and son. "Just breathe," he said quietly as if sensing the shift in energy around us. I took a deep breath but couldn't shake off the tension hanging thick in the air, a tension that felt both exhilarating and terrifying all at once. The weight of our circumstances pressed down heavily on me. What had started as an innocent moment now felt fraught with implications neither one of us could fully grasp yet. Suddenly, a loud noise jolted me from this precarious balance, a car engine revving outside followed by tires crunching against gravel as they approached our driveway. My heart sank at the realization, Mark would be home soon. Panic surged through me as Jake's hands paused mid-motion. We exchanged glances filled with unspoken understanding and apprehension about what this moment could mean if discovered. The warmth between us transformed into something fraught with fear, the kind that can only come from crossing boundaries we never intended to breach. "Jake," my voice trailed off as uncertainty gripped me tighter than before. "I know," he replied quietly but firmly before pulling away from me entirely, a sudden distance that left both physical and emotional space between us just as quickly as it had formed. The sound of keys rattling echoed through our home like a countdown clock ticking down toward inevitable confrontation, a reminder that everything could change in an instant if we weren't careful about how we navigated this newfound tension between us. As Mark stepped through the door moments later with his usual casual demeanor, unaware of what had just transpired, I couldn't shake off an overwhelming sense of dread mixed with longing for something more than what our lives had become together as a family. Something fragile yet tantalizingly close within reach if only we dared to explore it further despite all its potential consequences looming over us like dark clouds ready to burst forth at any moment without warning. As I lay there, the warmth of my son's hands pressed against my back, I fought to push aside the tumult of emotions swirling within me. Each stroke sent ripples through my consciousness, awakening memories that I had long tucked away. The sensation was both comforting and unsettling, a reminder of the closeness we once shared when he was younger, before life pulled us in different directions. "Mom, you're tense," he remarked softly, his voice tinged with concern. "You need to relax." I nodded, but my mind raced. The intimacy of this moment felt like a double-edged sword. Part of me craved the connection, another part recoiled at the thought of where this could lead. I remembered Mark's absence, the late nights at work and the distance that had crept into our marriage. It was easier to focus on my son's touch than to confront the void between me and my husband. "Just breathe," he instructed gently, his fingers working through knots in my shoulders. I inhaled deeply, trying to center myself amid the rising tide of conflicting feelings. As he continued, I allowed myself to lean into his touch. A wave of nostalgia washed over me, memories of bedtime stories and school projects flooded my mind. Those moments felt so distant now, overshadowed by the weight of unspoken truths between us. But it wasn't just nostalgia that stirred within me, it was something deeper, a longing for connection that had been absent for far too long. The boundaries I had set began to blur as his hands moved lower along my spine. I caught myself leaning into him more than necessary, seeking comfort in a way that felt wrong yet undeniably enticing. Then it happened, our lips met in a fleeting moment that shocked us both. The world around us faded as if time itself had paused to bear witness to our transgression. The kiss was innocent yet charged with all the emotions we had suppressed, confusion, desire, and fear mingled together like an electric current. Panic surged through me as reality crashed back in. Thoughts of Mark returning home loomed large in my mind like an impending storm threatening to break through our fragile peace. My heart raced as I pulled away from him abruptly, breathless and disoriented. "What just happened?" he asked quietly, eyes wide with surprise and uncertainty. I don't know," I stammered, trying to collect myself while grappling with a sense of guilt that clawed at my insides. "We shouldn't have, that wasn't right." He looked down at his hands, confusion etched across his features. "I didn't mean for it to go there." I sat up slowly, wrapping my arms around myself as if shielding against an invisible threat. "We need to forget this happened," I said firmly, though inside I felt a flicker of regret for what could have been, a chance for intimacy that had slipped through our fingers like sand. The sound of keys rattling echoed again from the front door, a reminder that our bubble was about to burst. My heart sank further as dread settled heavily in my chest while Mark stepped inside with his usual casual demeanor. "Hey! How was your day?" he called out cheerfully from the hallway. "Good," I replied too quickly, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. My son exchanged glances with me before retreating toward the kitchen under the guise of getting a snack, a silent agreement hanging between us as we both masked what had just transpired. Mark walked into the living room moments later, oblivious to the tension thickening in the air like fog rolling over Portland's streets on a dreary afternoon. "What's going on?" he asked casually but with an underlying curiosity as he glanced between us. "Just relaxing," I said lightly, trying to keep my voice steady despite feeling anything but calm inside. He raised an eyebrow but didn't press further. Instead, he dropped onto the couch next to me and flipped on the television, an attempt at normalcy amidst everything swirling around us. Yet normalcy felt like an illusion now. Beneath our everyday exchanges lay an undercurrent of anxiety threatening to surface at any moment. As Mark chatted about work, his voice filling space with mundane details, I couldn't shake off how fragile everything felt after what had just happened between my son and me. I stole glances at him across the room while feigning interest in whatever program Mark had turned on, a sitcom filled with laughter tracks masking deeper truths much like our own lives did now. He seemed lost in thought too. Perhaps we were both grappling with what this meant for us moving forward, or if we could even move forward at all without unraveling everything we held dear. A sudden thought struck me: what if this became more than just one moment? What if it opened doors we hadn't intended to explore? The fear gripped me tightly as Mark leaned closer toward me on the couch, his presence grounding yet also stifling as reality crashed back against any lingering fantasies spun from fleeting touches and stolen kisses. In those moments filled with laughter echoing from the television screen juxtaposed against silence growing heavier around us, I knew deep down that nothing could remain unchanged after today's events unfolded between us, all like petals falling away from their blossoms in autumn's chill air. The air in the room thickened, heavy with unspoken words and emotions swirling like autumn leaves caught in a gust. My heart raced, a wild rhythm echoing in my ears as I tried to grasp the enormity of what had just transpired. Mark's hand lingered on my shoulder, warm and comforting yet electric, igniting a confusion I never thought I would face. I turned slightly away, an instinctive move to create distance, to push back against the magnetic pull between us. The weight of my choices pressed down on me like an anchor threatening to drag me into uncharted waters. "We shouldn't," I whispered, the words barely escaping my lips. "Why not?" he replied softly, his voice laced with vulnerability. "It's just a kiss." Just a kiss? My mind raced through every moment leading up to this point, the laughter shared over breakfast, the quiet evenings spent together while his father worked late. Each memory felt like a thread woven into the fabric of our relationship, now fraying at the edges. The door creaked ever so slightly, and my heart skipped a beat at the sound. It was as if time slowed down, every second stretched into an eternity filled with dread and anticipation. My husband could be home any minute now. I glanced toward the hallway, anxiety creeping in like shadows stretching across the floor. Mark shifted closer again, his eyes searching mine for answers that felt elusive. "Mom, do you feel it too? This connection?" His question hung in the air between us, a fragile thing ready to shatter under scrutiny. I wanted to deny it, to push it away as if it were just another fleeting moment of weakness born from loneliness and longing for affection that had grown scarce over the years. Yet there was truth in his words, an undeniable bond that had formed through years of shared experiences and quiet understanding. "I don't know what I feel," I admitted finally, my voice trembling with uncertainty. "This is also confusing." He nodded slowly but didn't pull away. Instead, he leaned closer again, our faces inches apart, as if some invisible force held us together against our better judgment. Then it happened. Our lips met in a moment of weakness that shattered all pretense of normalcy between us. It was brief yet profound, an explosion of emotions that left me breathless and terrified all at once. Reality came crashing back as I pulled away sharply, panic flooding my senses. "Mark! We can't do this." My voice trembled as I fought against the tide of emotions threatening to overwhelm me. "I'm sorry," he said quickly, backing away as if stung by my rejection. "I didn't mean." "No." The word burst forth before I could stop it. "You don't understand, your father will be home soon." The urgency in my tone was palpable, every second felt like an eternity ticking away toward disaster. A silence enveloped us as thick and suffocating, as we both processed what had just transpired under this roof meant for family bonds rather than forbidden desires. The weight of our actions loomed large over us like storm clouds gathering on the horizon. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself amidst this chaos swirling within me, confusion mingling with guilt and fear for what lay ahead if we were discovered. "We need to act normal," I managed to say finally, forcing myself into practicality despite everything that had happened. Mark nodded silently but looked hurt, his expression revealing more than words could convey about how deeply this affected him too. As moments passed in strained silence punctuated only by distant sounds from outside, the chirping birds heralding evening's approach, I couldn't shake off the nagging feeling that something had irrevocably changed between us. Then came another sound, the unmistakable rumble of tires on gravel outside our home, followed by a familiar engine shutting off nearby sent shockwaves through me once again. "Your dad's home," I whispered urgently, panic rising within me anew as dread pooled in my stomach like lead weights dragging me down into despair. "What do we do?" Mark asked quietly but firmly, his earlier vulnerability replaced by determination tinged with fear. "Just act normal," I repeated desperately as adrenaline surged through me like wildfire, igniting every nerve ending within reach. There was no turning back now. I moved toward the living room door instinctively while Mark stayed behind for just a moment longer, a silent acknowledgement passing between us before we both stepped back into our respective roles. Mother and son navigating an increasingly treacherous landscape wrought with uncharted feelings threatening to unravel everything we knew about family ties forged over years spent together. As Mark settled onto the couch once again pretending nothing had occurred, I forced myself to breathe deeply while arranging cushions around him, trying desperately not to let panic take hold completely. But inside turmoil churned relentlessly beneath layers of forced calmness, masking deeper truths waiting patiently beneath surfaces barely scratched by reality's cruel hand. The front door swung open moments later, revealing my husband, tired yet cheerful after another long day at work, and all at once everything felt unbearably fragile. Each word exchanged became laden with meaning far beyond its surface, while laughter echoed hollowly around us, masking unease lurking beneath strange smiles shared among three people bound together by love yet teetering on precipices unseen until now. "Hey everyone," he called out brightly, stepping further inside, shaking off remnants of workday fatigue lingering around him like shadows clinging stubbornly despite brightening lights overhead illuminating familiar spaces filled with warmth crafted from years gone by. "Hi Dad." Mark responded too quickly perhaps, but managing enough cheerfulness to mask any tension still hanging palpably in air surrounding us all. A thin veneer barely holding everything together against pressures mounting steadily beneath surface calmness cocooning our family unit from outside world beyond walls enclosing us. As dinner preparations commenced around kitchen table where laughter flowed freely contrasting sharply against turmoil brewing beneath each smile exchanged, I stole glances toward Mark, frequently hoping for reassurance amid uncertainty gnawing relentlessly inside me, making it hard focus on anything else besides possibility looming dangerously close, threatening everything dear. With each passing moment spent together during evening meal filled with chatter punctuated by occasional laughter, it became increasingly difficult not acknowledge tension building subtly beneath layers, carefully constructed facades masking deeper truths hidden from sight, waiting patiently for reveal when least expected. And then came inevitable slip. A careless remark from Mark about school that sent ripples through conversation, drawing attention toward him, suddenly causing pause among all present, leaving questions hanging heavy in air, weighing down atmosphere, thickening unease surrounding table where secrets danced. Tantalizingly close yet remained tantalizingly outreach. Just then, a sound echoed from outside, breaking fragile silence. The unmistakable hum of car engines signaling arrival, unexpected visitor arriving at doorstep, sending shockwaves through family dynamics already strained beyond limits, testing resolve built upon years spent nurturing relationships forged through shared experiences now threatened by unforeseen circumstances unfolding rapidly around us. As tension reached fever pitch within confines walls sheltering our family unit, I couldn't shake feeling lingering dread hovering ominously overhead, reminding me constantly choices made earlier today might have consequences far-reaching beyond anything imagined possible when first entered this precarious dance, balancing precariously along edges, blurred lines defining boundaries drawn tightly around love, familial bonds tested time immemorial. The morning light filtered through the curtains, casting a soft glow in the room. I lay there, tangled in sheets, my mind racing with the weight of choices made in the dark hours of the night. We spent the night together, wrapped in a haze of confusion and unspoken emotions. The warmth of his body beside me felt both comforting and terrifying. As I turned to look at him, I saw his face relaxed in sleep, unaware of the storm brewing within me. A mix of guilt and longing twisted my stomach. How had we crossed this line? My heart raced at the thought of what this meant for our family. My husband would be home soon, I could feel it in my bones. The mundane routine of our lives was about to collide with an unspeakable truth. I slipped out of bed quietly, careful not to disturb him. The house felt eerily still as I moved through the familiar spaces, each step echoing memories of laughter and shared moments that now seemed tainted by last night's events. The kitchen was bathed in sunlight, yet shadows loomed over my thoughts. I poured myself a cup of coffee, its rich aroma filling the air, but it offered little comfort. Instead, it served as a reminder of how disconnected I had become from my husband over time. His late nights at work had left me feeling neglected and alone, now that neglect had morphed into something unrecognizable. The sound of footsteps drew my attention back to reality, a soft shuffle followed by a groggy voice calling out to me from the bedroom. "Mom? Are you awake?" My son's voice sent a chill down my spine. How would he view what had happened? Would he understand the complexity of our situation? I took a deep breath before answering. "Yes, honey. Just making coffee," I replied, trying to keep my tone casual. He appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from his eyes. His hair was tousled and his expression still held remnants of innocence that felt fragile now. He stepped into the kitchen and leaned against the counter, watching me closely. "Did you sleep okay?" he asked cautiously. "Not really," I admitted, pouring him a cup as well. "Just thinking about everything." He took a sip and frowned slightly. "About what?" I hesitated, weighing my words carefully. "About us, about family." His gaze dropped momentarily before meeting mine again with an intensity that made my heart race for reasons I couldn't quite grasp. "I've been thinking too," he said slowly. "About last night." A knot tightened in my throat as I braced myself for his next words. They could either shatter everything or somehow bind us closer together in understanding. "I didn't mean for it to happen," he continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "But it felt different." Different? That word hung heavily between us like an unspoken confession waiting to be acknowledged. It struck me how our perspectives might diverge. What was an act born from confusion for me could be something else entirely for him, an awakening or perhaps an exploration he hadn't anticipated. "Sometimes things happen that we can't control," I said carefully, hoping to steer this conversation away from deeper waters while still addressing his feelings. He nodded thoughtfully but didn't seem convinced by my attempt at reassurance. "I just don't want things to change between us," he finally said, vulnerability etched on his face. Change? Everything had already changed overnight without either of us fully grasping its implications. My heart raced again as I considered how fragile this moment was, how easily it could slip through our fingers if not handled delicately. Before I could respond further, we heard another sound, the unmistakable rumble of tires on gravel outside our home, followed by the familiar honk of my husband's car horn signaling his arrival. Panic surged within me like ice water coursing through my veins. My son's eyes widened as we exchanged glances filled with unspoken dread. Time seemed to freeze around us as reality crashed back into focus with brutal clarity. "I need you to act normal," I urged him urgently under my breath as we both instinctively moved towards separate corners of our shared space, the distance between us suddenly feeling monumental despite being mere feet apart. Okay, he replied hesitantly but resolutely before retreating back toward his room just as footsteps echoed through the front door, a stark reminder that life outside these walls continued unabated while chaos brewed within them. My husband entered with a casual smile that faltered when he noticed something off-kilter in the atmosphere surrounding us. A tension thick enough to cut through glass hung heavily in the air between our family unit, now fractured by secrets only known to two participants within its confines. "Hey. You're up early," he remarked cheerfully while setting down his briefcase onto the kitchen table, an everyday gesture that felt jarring against everything else swirling around us like storm clouds gathering overhead threatening rain without warning at any moment now. I forced a smile back onto my face even though inside all thoughts were racing ahead. What would happen if he sensed anything amiss? Would he question why we were both so quiet? Why did we seem distant from one another? As breakfast unfolded awkwardly around us, each bite tasted bitter despite being prepared with love. I couldn't shake feelings bubbling beneath surface threatening eruption at any moment. Every glance exchanged between husband and son felt loaded with meaning yet remained shrouded under layers carefully constructed facades hiding deeper truths longing for release. With every tick-tock echoing from clock hanging on wall above sink, I realized time was slipping away faster than anticipated, leaving no room left for denial anymore. Soon enough consequences would come crashing down upon all three involved, whether ready or not. And then suddenly, a phone rang, breaking silence wrapping around us like thick fog rolling over hills obscuring paths forward. Uncertainty loomed large, casting shadows across faces turned towards screen, flashing brightly, beckoning attention, demanding answers only time would reveal, leaving hearts pounding wildly beneath skin. The phone's persistent ringing shattered the silence, and I felt my heart drop. It was a reminder of reality, a stark contrast to the whirlwind of emotions swirling inside me. My son glanced at me, uncertainty flickering in his eyes, as if he too sensed the weight of what had just unfolded between us. The air thickened with unspoken words, the tension palpable. "Shouldn't you answer that?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I hesitated, torn between the call and the moment we had just shared. "It might be important," I replied, though my mind raced with thoughts of what lay ahead. The last thing I wanted was to face whatever consequences awaited us. I reached for my phone, fingers trembling slightly as I swiped to answer. "Hello? Lauren?" "It's me," my husband's voice came through, steady yet tinged with an edge of concern. "I'm on my way home early." Panic surged through me like ice water. "Oh. Everything okay?" "Yeah, just finished up at work sooner than expected." His tone suggested nothing was amiss, but I could feel the ground shifting beneath me. "Great. Just tidying up here," I managed to say, forcing a casualness into my voice that felt entirely false. As I hung up the phone, dread settled in my stomach like a heavy stone. My son's gaze bore into mine, confusion etched across his features. "What does that mean?" "It means we need to," my voice trailed off as I struggled to find the right words. How could I explain this tangled mess? "We need to talk about what happened." His expression shifted from confusion to something more intense, an emotion that mirrored my own turmoil. "Do you regret it?" "I don't know," I admitted slowly, grappling with the truth that hung heavily between us. The intimacy we had shared felt both thrilling and terrifying. It left me questioning everything about our relationship. "I don't either," he confessed quietly, his eyes searching mine for answers we both lacked. Just then, the sound of tires crunching on gravel outside sent a jolt through me. My husband was home, so soon. My heart raced as I glanced toward the window where shadows began to lengthen in the fading light. "We have to act normal," I whispered urgently. "Please." He nodded but remained still, caught in a web of emotions neither of us knew how to navigate. The door creaked open moments later, and my husband stepped inside with an easy smile that made my stomach churn even more. "Hey. You're both here." He looked around as if assessing our surroundings for any signs of trouble. "Just getting some fresh air," I said quickly, forcing a smile onto my face while trying to quell the rising panic within me. "Nice day out there," he noted casually as he hung up his coat by the door and walked further into the living room. My son shifted uncomfortably beside me while maintaining an air of nonchalance that felt utterly false given our recent encounter. The tension was suffocating. Every glance exchanged between us seemed loaded with unspoken truths ready to spill over at any moment. "What's for dinner?" my husband asked cheerfully as he moved toward the kitchen. "Oh, just some leftovers." My mind scrambled for anything mundane enough to keep him distracted from noticing anything amiss. As he rummaged through the fridge looking for food options, my son shot me a desperate look, one filled with questions and fears about what lay ahead for us all. "Did you two have a good day?" My husband turned back towards us suddenly as if sensing something deeper lurked beneath our surface-level responses. "Yes. Just relaxing." The word felt hollow on my tongue yet seemed necessary for maintaining this fragile facade we were constructing together. He nodded but lingered in place for longer than usual, his gaze lingering on both of us as if trying to decode some hidden message exchanged between mother and son without uttering it aloud. The silence stretched uncomfortably until he finally shrugged and returned to preparing dinner while humming softly under his breath, a tune that should have been comforting but only served to amplify the chaos brewing beneath our calm exterior. I glanced at my son again, his brow furrowed in thought before he finally spoke up hesitantly. "Hey Dad, can we talk later? About stuff?" My heart raced at how easily it slipped out. It felt like an invitation into dangerous territory, one neither of us could afford right now, but it hung heavy in the air nonetheless. "Sure thing." My husband replied brightly without hesitation. Obliviousness cloaked him like armor against whatever storm threatened our family dynamic at that moment, but not against what lingered in shadows behind closed doors waiting patiently for its chance to unravel everything we held dear. Dinner unfolded under an uneasy atmosphere where small talk filled gaps left by deeper truths left unaddressed. The clinking of silverware echoing louder than usual amidst forced laughter meant only to mask fear lurking close by waiting patiently just out of sight. Afterward came dessert, a simple affair consisting mostly of ice cream scooped from cartons while laughter bubbled forth, temporarily easing tension but never quite dissolving it entirely from our midst. The clock ticked steadily onward, marking time's relentless march toward inevitable confrontation looming closer than ever before, an unavoidable reckoning waiting just beyond reach, until finally, after much deliberation, my husband excused himself, leaving only echoes behind him. As soon as he was gone, a phone rang again, breaking silence once more, this time cutting through layers built around truths hidden beneath skin too thin, now stretched taut across hearts burdened by choices made without foresight or understanding. I looked over at my son, who wore an expression caught somewhere between defiance and fear, an internal struggle playing out behind eyes wide with uncertainty about what lay ahead, and before either could speak another word, the sound echoed louder, still punctuating moments suspended in time, threatening everything we thought we knew about ourselves and each other. The engine's hum faded as my husband's car pulled into the driveway. My heart raced, a frantic drumbeat echoing in my chest. I glanced at my son, whose face mirrored my own turmoil, an unsettling mixture of dread and confusion. The weight of the night pressed heavily on us both, a shared secret that threatened to unravel everything. "What do we do?" he whispered, his voice barely above a breath. "Just act normal," I replied, though the words felt hollow. Normalcy was a facade now, one that could shatter with the slightest pressure. I stood up, smoothing out my clothes as if that could somehow erase the tension that clung to the air. The front door swung open, and there he stood, my husband, tired but cheerful. "Hey. You're home early," I said, forcing a smile that felt more like a grimace. Traffic was lighter than I expected. He stepped inside, his eyes scanning the room. "What have you two been up to?" "Just hanging out," I said quickly, avoiding his gaze. The truth hung between us like an uninvited guest. "Did you have dinner?" he asked, moving toward the kitchen, his back turned to us. "No," my son replied too quickly. "We were just about to." "Great. I'll whip something up." He moved with ease through our familiar space, unaware of the storm brewing just beneath the surface. I exchanged a glance with my son, a silent communication filled with unspoken fears and questions we couldn't articulate. He looked away first, unable to maintain eye contact as his father hummed softly while rummaging through the fridge. "Do you want me to help?" I offered hesitantly. "No need," he said over his shoulder. "You two relax." I felt trapped in this domestic scene, my husband oblivious to the chaos lurking in our hearts while my son sat stiffly beside me on the couch. The mundane sounds of pots clanging and water running only amplified our discomfort. As dinner simmered on the stove, silence enveloped us again. The air was thick with unaddressed emotions, it felt stifling and oppressive. My mind raced through every possible outcome of this evening, the worst-case scenarios looping endlessly like an unsettling soundtrack. My husband returned to join us at the table, his demeanor brightening as he served up steaming plates of pasta. "How's school going?" "Any new projects?" he asked our son with genuine interest. "It's fine," he replied curtly, pushing food around on his plate without eating much. I could sense my husband's confusion growing as he glanced back and forth between us. "You okay? You seem a bit off tonight." "I'm fine," my son said too quickly again before taking a deep breath as if trying to steady himself against invisible waves crashing over him. "Just tired from studying," I added hastily to deflect any further questioning. My husband nodded but didn't seem convinced, there was an edge creeping into his tone when he spoke next. "You know you can talk to me about anything." The sincerity in his voice hit me hard, a reminder of what was at stake here. My heart twisted painfully at the thought of betraying him further by revealing even fragments of what had transpired between us. As we ate in silence punctuated by occasional small talk about mundane topics, work deadlines and upcoming family events, I felt an overwhelming urge to flee from this reality for just a moment. I excused myself under the pretense of needing fresh air and stepped outside into the cool evening breeze that brushed against my skin like a soothing balm against rising anxiety. The neighborhood was quiet, streetlights flickered softly overhead while shadows danced across lawns adorned with autumn leaves. I leaned against the porch railing and closed my eyes for a moment, breathing deeply as if trying to inhale clarity amidst chaos swirling within me. But clarity remained elusive. Instead, guilt coiled tighter around my heart like some insidious vine choking out every ounce of light. Footsteps approached behind me, the sound unmistakable even before I turned around to find my husband standing there with concern etched across his features. "You sure you're okay?" His voice softened slightly as he crossed his arms over his chest defensively, a gesture that made me feel even more cornered than before. "I'm just thinking." "About what?" I hesitated. How could I explain without exposing everything? "Just life." He stepped closer but didn't invade my space entirely. It felt almost protective yet distant at once, a reminder of how far apart we had drifted despite sharing this life together for so long now. "Do you need some time alone?" He searched my face for answers hidden beneath layers built over years spent together through thick and thin, yet now feeling so fragile under scrutiny's gaze that threatened exposure beyond repair if not careful enough. "No," I finally managed after what felt like an eternity weighed down by expectations unfulfilled along paths diverging ever farther apart from one another. "I just need things to go back to normal." He nodded slowly but didn't seem entirely convinced by my words either, perhaps sensing something deeper lurking beneath them. an undercurrent threatening all we'd built together since those early days filled with hope before life wore it down into routine monotony devoid of passion or connection. As we returned inside together silently, the weight still heavy upon both shoulders, I caught sight of our son watching from across the room where shadows gathered around him like dark clouds readying for storms yet unseen. The tension thickened palpably once more between us three, a silent acknowledgement passing through glances exchanged before returning back toward dinner plates laden with untouched food waiting patiently for resolution never truly coming. And then it happened, the phone rang again breaking through fragile moments suspended in time once more, this time louder than before echoing throughout spaces filled only moments ago with laughter now replaced by uncertain silence threatening everything ahead. My husband answered it without hesitation while I stood frozen watching him speak quietly into receiver held close against ear listening intently, but unable to discern anything beyond hushed tones exchanged until finally breaking away glancing back toward me suddenly somber-faced. "What is it?" I asked cautiously sensing shift within atmosphere tightening around us again like noose constricting ever tighter still squeezing breaths away. "It's work," he replied slowly lowering phone slightly down after ending call abruptly leaving lingering unease hanging heavy within air thickening once more between breaths shared amongst each other bound tightly together yet feeling worlds apart still trapped within confines created long ago. The call ended abruptly, leaving a silence that felt like a thick fog settling over the room. I could see my son's expression shift, his brows furrowing as he processed the abrupt end to whatever conversation had just taken place. The unease between us lingered, and I could almost hear the ticking clock in the background, each second amplifying the tension. "What was that about?" he asked, his voice steady but edged with curiosity. "Just work," I replied too quickly, hoping to deflect any further inquiry. The truth felt heavy on my tongue, an unspoken weight that threatened to pull us both under. He nodded slowly, but I could see the flicker of doubt in his eyes. "You seem off," he said quietly. "Is everything okay?" I forced a smile, trying to mask the turmoil bubbling just beneath the surface. "Of course. Just a long day." My heart raced as I spoke, it felt like a flimsy cover for what lay beneath. The distance between us had grown palpable since that night, an invisible chasm filled with unacknowledged feelings and secrets. Dinner was a quiet affair, punctuated by awkward glances and strained attempts at conversation. My husband pushed his food around on his plate while my son stared at his phone more than the table. The atmosphere crackled with unspoken words, a storm brewing just out of sight. "Did you hear back from your project?" my husband finally asked, breaking the silence but only partially bridging the gap between us. "Not yet," I replied, forcing enthusiasm into my tone. "But I'm hopeful." A lie wrapped in optimism, the project had been stalled for weeks now. "Hopeful is good," he said, though his eyes were still glued to my son's face rather than mine. The rift widened as they exchanged glances filled with questions neither was ready to voice. As we finished dinner, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to unravel, like a thread pulled from a carefully woven tapestry. My son excused himself first, retreating to his room without another word. The door clicked shut behind him with an unsettling finality. "Are you sure everything is all right?" my husband asked after a moment of silence stretched between us like an elastic band ready to snap. "Yes," I insisted too quickly again, bracing myself against the kitchen counter as if it would provide some grounding force amidst this chaos. He studied me for a moment longer before sighing and rising from the table. "I'll clean up." I watched him move about mechanically, washing dishes while lost in thought, as guilt gnawed at my insides like acid slowly eroding away at something precious. It dawned on me how easily we had fallen into this routine of avoidance. Each passing day felt like another layer added to our already complex lives. Just then, my phone buzzed on the counter, a notification that pulled me from my reverie. It was from an unknown number but carried an urgency that piqued my interest despite myself. I hesitated before opening it, curiosity wrestled with caution in my mind. When I finally glanced at the screen, it revealed a single line: "We need to talk." My heart raced again, not out of fear but anticipation laced with dread. Who could this be? Why now? 1,000 scenarios played out in my head, none seemed promising or safe. Who is it? My husband's voice broke through my thoughts as he approached me again after finishing up in the kitchen. No one important, I lied again reflexively but felt hollow inside saying it. Every word seemed coded in deception now. He narrowed his eyes slightly but didn't push further, perhaps sensing that now wasn't the time for interrogation, yet something shifted within him nonetheless. Suspicion hung heavy in the air between us like smoke from a dying fire. "I'll be outside for a bit," he said finally and stepped out onto our porch without waiting for a response. Alone again in our home filled with memories both cherished and tainted by recent events, I felt trapped within four walls closing tighter around me by every passing moment. I glanced back down at my phone screen. The message sat there like an unanswered question demanding attention while shadows danced along walls illuminated by fading daylight outside. The minutes dragged on painfully slow as I debated whether or not to respond when suddenly another sound broke through, the unmistakable rumble of tires crunching gravel followed by footsteps approaching our door. A wave of anxiety washed over me as I peered through window blinds and caught sight of someone standing there, a figure silhouetted against twilight's fading glow, but before clarity settled upon me fully, the doors swung open unexpectedly without warning. My husband stood frozen mid-sentence while confusion flickered across his features. Standing behind him was someone I never expected, an old friend from years past whose arrival sent shockwaves through me instantly. "What are you doing here?" My voice trembled slightly despite efforts to maintain composure amidst swirling emotions threatening to spill over any second now. "I got your message," she said evenly though her gaze darted nervously between us both before landing squarely back on me once more, as if she sensed something amiss yet couldn't quite put her finger on it either. In that moment, caught between past choices made carelessly and present consequences looming large, I realized how fragile everything truly was, how one misstep could unravel all we held dear. And just like that, the weight of truth pressed down harder than ever before. The evening hung heavy in the air, a thick blanket of tension smothering the usual warmth of our home. My husband had returned early, his presence an unwelcome reminder of the chaos I had tried to ignore. He moved through the kitchen, humming softly to himself, while I stood frozen in the living room, my heart racing. The shadows of my choices loomed large, threatening to engulf me. "Hey, Lauren," he called out casually, "what's for dinner?" I forced a smile, trying to project normalcy despite the storm brewing inside me. "Just some pasta and salad," I replied, my voice steady but lacking enthusiasm. As he entered the dining area, I caught a glimpse of our son in the hallway. His expression was unreadable, a mixture of guilt and defiance played across his features. The unspoken words hung between us like a fragile thread ready to snap. I could feel his eyes on me, searching for reassurance as if he sensed the shifting dynamics within our family. "Everything okay?" my husband asked, his gaze flicking between us. The question pierced through the air like an arrow aimed at my heart. "Yeah, just tired," I managed to say, forcing myself to meet his eyes. But even as I spoke, doubt crept into my mind. Did he see through my facade? Did he know about that night, the weight of our shared secret lurking just beneath the surface? Dinner unfolded with an awkward rhythm. My husband chatted about work while I stirred my pasta absent-mindedly. Our son sat at the table, pushing food around his plate but rarely joining in on the conversation. Each silence felt like a chasm widening between us. When we finally sat down to eat, I noticed how my husband's laughter seemed forced. It echoed off the walls like an empty promise. The tension was palpable as we navigated through small talk while avoiding deeper truths that threatened to spill over. Then came the moment that shattered our fragile peace. A phone call interrupted our dinner. "Excuse me," my husband said as he reached for his phone on the counter. "I need to take this." He stepped outside onto the porch while I exchanged a glance with our son. The air crackled with unspoken words and unresolved feelings. It was a silent acknowledgement of everything that had transpired between us. "What are we doing?" he whispered when we were alone in that space filled with uncertainty. "I don't know," I replied honestly, feeling stripped bare before him. His eyes searched mine for answers that neither of us could provide. "Do you regret it?" The question hung heavy in the air as memories flooded back, the warmth of his touch during that massage and how easy it had been to lean into those feelings when everything else felt so distant and cold. "No," I said finally, though regret twisted in my stomach like a coiled snake. "But this can't happen again." Just then, my husband's voice carried from outside, louder than before, as if something significant was being discussed on the other end of the line. "Yeah? No way. Are you sure?" His tone shifted from casual to urgent in an instant. My heart raced as dread settled over me like ice water pouring down my back. What news could possibly warrant such alarm? "What is it?" our son asked quietly as he leaned closer. "I don't know," I murmured back, fear creeping into my voice. Moments later, my husband stepped back inside with an expression etched in concern, a stark contrast to his earlier demeanor at dinner. "Lauren," he said slowly as if choosing each word carefully, "we need to talk." The gravity of his tone sent chills down my spine. Every instinct screamed at me that whatever news awaited would change everything once more. "Is everything okay?" I asked cautiously, anxiety clawed at me like a wild animal desperate for escape. He took a deep breath before continuing, "It's about your sister, she's coming here tomorrow." A wave of confusion washed over me. My sister hadn't visited in years, and yet her arrival now felt like an impending storm ready to break upon us all without warning. "Why?" My voice trembled slightly as panic surged within me. She was not someone whose presence brought comfort or joy, especially now when secrets threatened to tear us apart. "She needs help," he replied firmly yet softly. There was no escaping this reality now looming over our family like dark clouds gathering overhead before a tempest. Before I could respond or process what this meant for all of us, my son shifted uncomfortably beside me. Uncertainty etched across his face mirrored what lay within me too, a swirling mass of fear and guilt intertwined with hope for redemption somehow hidden among these revelations yet again. And then came another twist. The doorbell rang sharply through our home. Each chime echoed ominously against walls steeped in secrets long kept hidden away from prying eyes. My heart raced once more. What now? Who stood waiting outside? Would they bring more chaos into this already fractured world? I glanced at my son, who met my gaze with wide eyes filled with dread. The weight of truth loomed heavier than ever before as we stood together on this precipice teetering between revelation and ruin. And just like that, the door swung open.